From every strand on the line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook, let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John.
Hey, y'all are. Cajun Rob here. I feel like I'm underdressed. I mean, John's got like a suit and tie on over here,
right?
man. I'm underdressed, man. What's up with that?
He's up in the game.
You probably don't want me to take this shirt and tie off, though.
No, that's a whole different show.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we want views, so we're not going to do that. But no, we have Scott Noel. He's excellent fisherman from excellent smallmouth fisherman, especially from Ohio. And I asked him to come on and talk to us about tube fishing. I think the tube, since drop shotting and Ned rigging, the tube has got kicked to the wayside. And but that's not always true up in Lake Erie. I mean, you can still smack them that way. And so I just wanted to have Scott come on and talk about how he does it.
Yeah, and very, very underrated and versatile lure for sure.
That's a fact. That's an understatement. I think John hit it on the head. I think since the jig head minnow and the drop shot have come on scene, I think the general population angler has stopped or at least limited the use of the tube. But the guys that are fishing tournaments and fishing for the big fish, I promise you, still have them on the deck of their boat.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I fish some BFLs. There's some guys still flipping them. I see some guys, stupid tube. I mean, there's so many different ways that I've seen guys drop shot them. I mean, it's amazing how much you can do. I mean, for a co-angler, you can't pack much tackle. I mean, that's perfect for multi-purpose plastics for sure.
Yeah, years ago, and I forget now, the last year they did FLW as a co-angler. The second day I pulled John Bondi, who's a guide up on St. Clair, and I had, I believe, 23-2 out of the back of his boat on 5 drops. 5 drops, 5 fish, 23-2, and I sat there and waited for him to get to 20 pounds before I fished again. And it was all on just a regular rig tube, what I call regular. So and there's a couple things that I do a little different. So obviously I fish St. Clair, which is, I wouldn't say mostly grass, but you're fishing a lot of grass. And then Erie is mostly rocks, right?
Yep.
So Erie, you can get away with fishing it just about any way you want to, right? You can fish the exposed, the exposed hook with, some guy, I think it's personal preference on Lake Erie, either the 90-degree hook tie or the 60-degree, right? But if you're fishing the grass, like up on St. Clair or Champlain or somewhere like that, it's my experience that 60-degree line tie keeps a lot of the grass off, which typically when you're fishing the BFLs and stuff like that, the co-anglers that haven't had a lot of experience with a tube get frustrated with the grass every single cast. And then they put it down because they're tired of picking the grass off, because they think once the grass gets on that tube, the cast is over. Well, I mean, if you fish it enough and pay attention to what you're doing, you can rip that tube out of that grass. And a lot of times that triggers the bite. So, the first thing I would do is tell you to go out there just like that. I don't know if you can see it, but just a 60-degree line tie. I use an EWG hook, especially on the heavier weight jig heads, because what you'll find is when that big smallmouth, I'm talking the 5-pounders out on Erie, and occasionally you'll get the 5s on St. Clair also. When that weight is hanging out of the fish's mouth, you want as big a hook as you can get into their mouth. So if not, it kind of pulls that. And I've lost a lot of big fish trying to use smaller finesse type hooks. So an EWG hook like that, I would tell you to start with that. Now, if you get into a situation where you are fishing and it's a lot of grass and it's starting to affect your cast, like Rob said, then you can go to the stupid tube,
Yep.
which basically is the same thing. But what you do is you start out, pull a tube out here, and I won't rig it up all the way because I don't want to take the time. But instead of, your typical tube, you take the jig head and you shove it up in there, and then your hook comes out of it. To start your stupid tube, you actually take the hook and go into the tube. You go up to about a quarter of an inch from the head of the tube. You come out, you rotate it 180, and then you have something that looks like this.
Yep.
So it's basically the same thing, but it's weedless. So you bring that hook through the tube, and then you skin hook it, you text pose it, whatever you want to call it, and then you have a weedless per se tube. And the only thing that's really going to grab any grass is that little bitty line tie. And like I
Yep.
said, if you're using a 60 degree, it will slide over most of that. So what I usually do is if I'm whacking them on a tube and my co-angler is giving me that, come on, man, help me look, I'll rig a stupid tube for them and let them drag that around, pop it around the grass. And that thing will catch just as many fish as the normal tube. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I've
yeah,
done good on it. I've done good on it. Del Hollow. I had one tournament, like first of the morning, I cast on this little hump, and I had like two huge crappie. The crappie so big I could lip them, and
right.
then I caught a couple bass after that. But that was funny that the crappie just eat it up too.
Well, everything eats tubes. I mean, if
Yep.
you remember, and I don't know, Rob and I probably remember. John's a little younger than the two of us, if I remember right.
Just
But
a little
No,
bit.
no.
yeah, if you
I'm more-
remember these tubes, they started out in the 60s with a brand called Gets It.
Yep.
If you remember, the Gets It was from the 1960s, and it was made by Bobby Garland.
Yep.
And Bobby kept it a secret until Guido Hibden found out about it.
Yep.
Guido won a couple tournaments. He showed Shaw Grigsby how to use it. Shaw won, I believe, maybe the St. John's and Lake Mead or something like that, and then it blew up. Now, I'm telling you, I'll bet 75% of the pros in any BASS tournament or FLW high level tournament at least have one tied on in their bait box or in their rod box. They may not be using it every tournament, but this is probably one of the most underrated baits there are because you can fish it so many different ways. Obviously the open hook or the stupid tube for smallmouth and even largemouth per se, but when it's spawn, when you fish where I fish, the Ohio River and stuff, heavy pressure, not a lot of fish. Like if I'm fishing a BFL, I will probably throw a Texas rig, just a Texas rig tube.
Yep.
The same way as the stupid tube, but I'll use a 4-aught EWG from Hayabusa, and then I'll put a bobber stopper and say it just depends on the depth of the water, quarter, 3/16, even up to 5/16. And man, you want to talk about getting some bites that everybody else is passing over. Texas rig a tube and flip it in them bushes to where it doesn't get hung up. I guarantee you it'll catch you a couple more fish. I promise.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Another thing about that, when you Texas rig it, you can skip them easier too.
There is no doubt. And if you understand the whole premise behind the tube in the first place, it mimics a dying shad, right? So if you skip it, that's a dying shad skipping across. And then when it goes down in the water, 9 times out of 10, it spirals like a dead shad. And that's what triggers the bite. So, I mean, you got to kind of do a little history lesson on it to understand really what Bobby was trying to do when he made the bait. And it was mimic a dying shad. And I mean, you guys are absolutely right. I think it's a lot of people have just put it away because there's so much new craze with the drop shot and the jig head minnow. And I'm not telling you those don't catch fish and that I don't have those on the deck of my boat also. I'm just telling you, I always have a tube tied on 100% of the time.
Absolutely. And talk about that stupid tube. I mean, it seems like it glides, and every time you pick it up and falls, it goes a different direction. It goes all kind of ways.
And a lot of times, yeah, it'll, you get the circle tube, but sometimes it'll even go backwards. And if you can get any bait, I don't care if you're fishing a Cinco, I don't care what you're fishing. If you can get a bait to go backwards, it's going to trigger, because the fish are looking at that bait and they're deciding if they want to eat it. But if it starts coming to their face, they're going to munch it the minute it starts moving towards them. So like Rob said, if you can lift that bait up and pump it and,
Yep.
rip it, whatever you want to stroke it, whatever you want to call it, it's called different things all over the country, but it will trigger bites. I promise you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I said I've like on Rocky, like in Del Hollow in the rocks, or just like the little humps. I mean, it don't have to be grass, but I've caught them everywhere on it. I know one guy, I think it was at a BFL. It's been a few years ago. He won, got in the top 5 on the co-angler side, and he had my boater link. And I asked him, I said, "What's that guy fishing?" He says, "Dude, he fished a stupid tube all day and crushed him. He beat me."
Yeah.
I was like,
The stupid tube is what everybody else calls a Cinco. Because, I mean, if you're a co-angler, if you fish a Cinco or what am I thinking? Worm, the jig head worm.
Yep.
Ned
Like you weren't.
What, on the jig head.
Yep, Ned.
A Ned rig, but with a bigger worm.
Yep.
Shaky head.
Shaky head. That's what I'm thinking.
I don't throw that, so I wouldn't know.
But if you throw a shaky head, or if you throw a Cinco, you might as well throw a tube, because they all accomplish the exact same thing. It's just, I mean, I don't know why people got away from the tube. I promise you I haven't. I got an entire big Ziploc bag full of tubes, an entire box that stays in my boat of jig heads. Like, it's a bait I use a lot. I just don't say a lot. I mean, you guys asked me to do it, and I said I'd probably release a couple secrets, but man, I have a tube on the deck every tournament. I'm fishing Saturday on the Ohio River on Tanner's Creek, and I'll have a tube tied on. I promise you.
Nice. I know how tough Tanner's Creek is. Like, I caught one fish as a co one time. Almost cashed a check on one fish.
Yeah, I mean, I won my BFL down there with 4 fish that weighed 9.6, and I won it by a pound.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was 150 something boats.
Yep.
So
Why can't New York be like that?
Right? But, I mean, I won't tell you I won't fish a few of them this year, because they're just close to my house, and obviously I retired recently, and they're trying to reel me back into working again. So I may fish a couple tournaments closer to home before I go to the Potomac. But I mean, if you can catch fish on the Ohio River, you can catch them anywhere. And that's fact.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I had it was a Bass Nation a few weeks ago on Maysville, on the Maysville part of Ohio River. Never been there. And I caught one nice one, almost 3-pounder, and finished second on that one fish.
Well, that pool sucks worse than the Tanner's pool.
Yeah, I know.
So I'll tell you, in the same tune, I fished a BFL the same year I won the BFL on Tanner's. 3 weeks later, we went to Maysville. My first cast of the day was a 3-2 smallie on top water. I finished 9th. So I understand you're talking about one fish. If it's a good fish, you're gonna be in the money down there, because those fish are scarce.
Oh yeah, yeah. I caught a couple of like crappie and a couple of shorts, and I think I landed on his head, because like as soon as it hit the water, he took off with it.
Yeah,
and he swam right toward me.
I don't know where those fish are in that pool, but if you told me I had to fish Maysville all the time, I think I'd take up golf. Like it's bad, man. It is bad.
Yeah, and it was really bad, because it was high and muddy, and then like coming back, we had like 3 or 4 foot rollers, and my boater like speared a couple waves. I got soaked, but it was a good day though still. Yeah,
so I would just tell. I mean, my setup when I'm fishing for smallmouth, like up on Erie or St. Clair, I have my rod here. It's a 7-foot Tatula Elite from Daiwa with a Tatula Elite 2500 reel. I backfill it with the P-Line Spin X. I always use some kind of backing on every rod, even my bait casters. It'll save you some money, and
absolutely.
Anytime you're spooling reels every couple of weeks. I mean, you can't afford to do 100 yards at a time. So I always use the Spinex from P Line, and then my go-to is tactical 8 pound. My experience has been you don't need to drop down to 6 when you're using P Line tactical, because the diameter is small enough that I see absolutely no difference from 6 to 8, and I don't break off the 8. Not that I ever broke off the 6. But if I can use the 8, I'm going to obviously take the higher pound test if I'm not losing any performance. So that's 100% of the time. I don't change that. The only time you might get me to go to 10 would be if you're fishing around a lot of zebra mussels,
Yeah.
and yes, Lake Erie has them, but I haven't experienced where I'm breaking off. But if I were, I might go up to 10 because the diameter is still small enough. The fish aren't going to care. I mean, the fish, again, I don't want to release all the secrets. I mean, there's guys that always run to St. Clair. There are guys that always run to Erie, but Erie fish are a half pound bigger than St. Clair on normally. That's not to say you can't go to St. Clair and win a BFL or win a Bassmaster event. That's not what I'm saying. But if you day in and day out you catch 5 fish on Lake Erie and you catch 5 fish on St. Clair, the fish in Erie are going to be bigger, but the fish in Erie can burn you a heck of a lot faster with wind change, current, and mud.
Yep.
So I will tell you personally, 80% of the time I go to St. Clair because I don't like getting burnt. And I mean, Chad Pipkins, for instance, he's from Michigan. When the Bassmasters go to St. Clair, he's got burnt two years in a row running to Erie because that's the bet. If those fish on Erie will fire, they will beat St. Clair fish every time. But you get down there, the wind goes from northwest to southeast, you're done. Like those fish will shut down like a light switch turning off. You can still catch those fish in St. Clair because they're not as susceptible to the wind change. Not that they aren't, but it's not lights out different. And I've been on Erie where you catch 25 pounds in an hour on Monday and you go out there on Tuesday and you fish for 8 hours and you may catch one fish just because of the current and the wind change. So Erie's a gamble. If it pays off, it's going to pay off big, but it's a gamble to fish out there because it's so susceptible to different wind and everything. That's why St. Clair's kind of a safe bet because no matter what direction the wind blows out of, you can always hide somewhere. If it's out of the north, you can go up and hide in Anchor Bay, right? If it's southwest, you can hide on the mile roads and down, South Shore area, northeast, pack your stuff up and go home because that's not going to be any fun at all. But I mean, you can always find a place to fish on St. Clair. Erie, the best you can hope for on Erie is a north wind, and then you can run across that North Shore and you can run all the way to Peely at 60 miles an hour and it's no big deal. But if that wind switches to south or southeast, no bueno.
Oh, heck.
So
I think the wind for all the Great Lakes is a big telltale.
yeah, I mean, you don't want it without any wind. I mean, that makes it just as tough as too much wind, right? So you kind of want that. You want a little bit of chop for the most part. Now, if you get those glass calm days, you take advantage of them because they don't happen very often. But you can go to the current that's not that's not wind related, the river mouths, and you run up into the St. Clair River or the Detroit River and fish current breaks, and that it's always current on those rivers, right? And even in St. Clair, down the shipping channel and everything else, there's always current because there's always north to south flow. And I believe I may be off a day. I think they say St. Clair empties every 3 days. The entire lake, all that water goes out like every 3 days is how much current. So if you get down towards the mouth of either the Detroit River or the St. Clair River, there's always current. So even on those glass days, and you know how those can be, sometimes those are really tough days, then you can go hit the actual natural current and still catch them. But I prefer a little bit of wind and maybe a 1 foot chop, and then
Yep.
you can stay off the trolley motor and just fish, and you don't have to worry about speed and everything else. And you're not spot locking, or worst case scenario, you're in 3 footers and your spot lock's out of the water half the time, and your props, and you got water coming over the front deck, which is a typical day on Lake Erie, right? Or St.
yeah.
Clair. I mean,
I
it's
mean, we
always
had that we had that 1 foot chop on Oneida a couple years ago, didn't we?
yeah. I asked Jeremy May about that 1 foot chop. Well,
Yeah, one turn in the six in 2 minutes.
yeah,
Now we have a
right.
couple of comments. Let's get into those real
Yep,
quick. Guy from your neck of the woods, Greg Bogan, says good evening.
Hey, Greg, how's it going, buddy?
He's out in Ohio. Says Lake Erie tube fishing is top notch.
That's
Absolutely.
It's hard to beat a tube anywhere in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing for me is just trying to find out what color. Now, Erie is kind of that, you want that darker tube, with the purple in it or something like that. St. Clair, I mean, I stay kind of near the green pumpkins and kind of the more natural look, but for some reason on Erie they want a darker tube. I mean, I don't really know why. Maybe it's the Gobi color. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to go crazy and have 37 different kinds of tubes and worry about gold fleck and silver fleck and everything else. I mean, you can get 3 or 4 different colors and stay in the ball game. So
Oh,
I have
absolutely.
about 30-pound box of tubes sitting
Right.
over there.
we all do.
They've been around a long time. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, I will tell you, scent has a lot to do with it. So I would tell
Yep.
anybody that's going to go up to the Great Lakes, up to St. Clair or Erie or any of those, when I'm sliding that jig head into that tube, I have, and I couldn't tell you the name of it because the label is actually worn off. It's so old. I always, you can put it in your mouth and wet it, but I'm not a big fan of lead in my mouth after Eddie Van Halen and everybody else has had mouth cancer and everything else.
Yeah.
So I just stick it in in a tube of garlic, and it slides
Smelly
down
down.
in there, and you don't
Yep.
you don't rip your tube as you're sliding it, especially if you're using maybe 3/8 because it's really windy. Those tube heads are bigger, so you can split depending on what brand tube you use. But I always use either garlic or bait fuel or thump gel or something that gives it, a little bit easier slide in for the tube head, but also gives that tube a little bit of taste to where that fish may hold on to it a second longer. So I would tell everybody that if you're going to tube fish, always use some sort of fish attractant on it.
Yeah, I remember Guido Hibden and his dad used to put like Alka-Seltzer in his tubes and all. It hit the
Get
bottom,
them to
have his
fizz.
bubble. Yeah, fizz. It all kind of tricks.
Well, yeah,
He
I mean,
put-
you could use a not a piece of cork, but they also use a piece of styrofoam up at the end of it
Yeah.
to get it to float a little bit. And I'll give you a little secret. Secret is try one on a Carolina rig when the fishing is really, really hard. If those
Yep.
fish are pressured to death, try one on a Carolina rig with, like I said, that little piece of styrofoam or something that'll get that tube up and just kind of floating around. Money.
Well, yeah, some guys use earplugs. They'll put the earplug on earplugs. Yeah,
Same thing. Yeah, it gives it a little bit of buoyancy, and that behind a Carolina rig, those fish don't know what the hell it is. Like they don't. They're like they've never seen that before. It looks like a crawdad if it's just kind of gliding around. And I mean that's a good way to pick up an extra fish.
You weren't going to say.
What's that?
That's one of the things I was hoping you weren't going to mention. But that's okay.
Well, I mean, I have 2 things, and that's one of them. I had them kind of off to the side, like you may mention it, you may not, but I'm not fishing against most of these guys, so I'll give them a little info. But yeah, a tube on a Carolina rig is something that they don't see an awful lot, and they get curious about. So if you got the right water conditions, and the second one I'll give you, and I'm not saying I didn't do it, but I didn't know the kind of the impact of it or how good it was. is you were asking me before we went live about doing the officialing for MLF.
Yep.
Is I did it a couple years ago on St. Clair for 4 days. All 4 of my guys made the championship, and 3 of the 4 guys used a tube on a drop shot. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say about it. They used a tube on a drop shot and absolutely destroyed them. Like, better than the drop shot was doing it with a flatworm or a minnow, or they were drop shotting a tube.
Oh yeah.
And they were in the low to mid 20s. All 3 of the 4 of the guys, they were in, I believe, 23-pound range every day that I marshaled for them. So,
and I really wish you didn't say that, by the way.
I can't come on here and they go, man, we knew all of that stuff. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know it, but
yeah, I'm joking. And one of my favorite tubes to drop shot is the Bitsy tube.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scott.
Strong little tubes. They're strong little tubes.
Yeah, that's all I'll say. But yeah, next time you go out, if you're up on St. Clair, and right now is a great time because I've seen some posts today, guys, 200 fish in 2 days, and like those fish are starting to group up a little deeper now, getting into their summer groove, so they're going to start getting fat. My understanding, the mayflies have started, which just put a buff on and tough it out because they're a pain in the ass in the mornings because they're all over everything, but they make the fish. You can have some of the best topwater. I know we're talking tubes, but when those mayflies hatch, there's nothing better than getting a 5-pound smallie on a topwater, like a whopper plopper. I had a 5.2 last year on a whopper plopper, and it looked like you threw a cinder block out of a 2nd-story window. Like the water exploded. So yeah, I mean, if you go up there, I'd just say try it, and it will fish with a flatworm every day, all day long.
Oh yeah.
You'll definitely be wanting to take up residence.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, and I know you have St. Lawrence and Champlain, which are awesome fisheries. I think St. Clair and St. Lawrence and Champlain can probably all be in the same box, and then everybody else is in a different box. But man, between those 3 lakes and Gunnersville, where I just got back from for the Toyota, like if you live within a couple hours of either or any of those bodies of water, you're spoiled, and that's just the way it is. That's why I'm trying to make our way to Alabama at some point. It's probably going to be a couple more years, but that's where we're going to end up because.
Why wouldn't you want to move to New York? We could always use more taxpayers.
Yeah, well, yeah, especially after what I saw today. We won't get into a political conversation, but $50 million, holy smoke! But no, there's only one problem with New York. I love the fishing in New York. I'm tired of snow, and I'm sure Rob's the same way. Like, I want to go south. Not to say Gunnersville doesn't get snow, but it could snow on Monday and be 60 degrees on Wednesday. Here, I mean, unless I'm traveling, you're done fishing in November, and you're not fishing again till March. And I'm not getting any younger. I just turned 56. I want to fish 12 months a year. I don't want to winterize my boat. I don't want to put it in a garage and unload it. Like, I want to use it. So,
absolutely.
Man, I'll tell you that 2-3 weeks ago at Gunnersville was more fish than I've ever caught in a 7-day period in my life. And I caught them from the minute I got there. I ran out to my first spot, turned my key off, and first cast I had a 514, and it didn't stop till I left. Like, it was an amazing week. I mean, I posted some pictures of my thumb. It hurt so bad to get the fish out of the live well the second day. Like, I'm trying to hold on to the call tags, and like, it hurt to even do that. Like, every time I called, I was almost crying. I felt like such a puss, but man, my fingers hurt so bad. I caught so many big fish and all week long, and it was amazing. And I mean, St. Clair, Erie, it's all the same.
Yeah. Just so you know, Rob down in Kentucky had more snow than I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year probably. Our weather is really jacked up.
It is. I mean, we've had tornadoes and everything.
I was just down at Kentucky Lake for the Bass Pro Tour last week, the week before, whatever week it was.
Yeah.
Like it hadn't rained, and then I get there and it rains 3 days straight. When I was down there for the Toyota, it rained almost 16 inches in 4 days. Like I think every time I go there, it decides to be a complete washout. And I mean that lake has been rocking all year long with current.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
they were even pulling, I want to say 68,000 cubic feet per second when I was down there. And when I was down there for the Toyota, it's 140. So, I mean, this weather has been really crazy, and it's storming here today. So,
Oh yeah, we're getting it tonight. I see you getting it now. We're getting it tonight. So our turn's coming.
right.
Yep. But I noticed on Kentucky Lake though, the smallmouth is kind of migrated up north. I've seen a lot more smallmouth come in than usual on Kentucky Lake, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, that lake is coming back. I hope they didn't expose it maybe a year too early, but what I do like, and I think they had a BFL there last Saturday, took 12, I think 12 even, but it's a 3 fish limit now. Starting
Yep.
June, I believe June 1st, they go to 3 fish limit, BFLs and everybody. So they're trying not to kill those fish, transporting them from, Paris all the way up to Kentucky Dam Village or whatever. So they're doing a good job at managing it. I can tell you from officialing the Bass Pro Tour for 2 days, there are more 1.5 to 3 pound bass in that lake right now than maybe any lake in the country.
Wow.
Like I weighed a bunch of 112s, 2 3s. So that those fish are like that. It's just going to get better, right? As long
Oh
as
yeah.
we don't lose a spawn or have a real bad flood to where the TVA can't manage it. Like the amount of bait that's in that lake right now, and like you said, the smallmouth had been transplanted up north. So up until probably beginning mid-May, most of those tournaments are won on all smallmouth. Now
Yep.
the largemouth are starting to take over because the smallmouth are post spawn and they're long and skinny.
Yep.
So not to say somebody can't weigh in a good one, but now the big largemouth are starting to show back up because they're out on the ledges now and they're eating like piranhas. So you get those school fired up, you can catch 10 or 15 of them in 15 minutes. But yeah, it's coming back. It's coming back good. And the smallmouth fishing, especially in the springtime, is phenomenal. I mean, last year, the first 3 BFLs that I cashed checks in, I had 15 smallmouth. So I didn't weigh in a largemouth on the first 3. So they were all smallies.
Wow. Nice.
All right, I got a question about tubes.
Yep.
How do you decide whether you're going to drag them, hop them, dead stick, or whatever? How do you decide that?
So I will tell you, in being in the boat, back to this marshaling and officialing, I'm picking up more and more that these guys are targeting the active fish first. Not to say they won't go for the inactive fish at some point, but they're trying to catch the most active fish as fast as they can do it. So I would tell you, I used to drag a tube a lot. I start out popping that tube and working it all crazy and everything to try to get those real aggressive fish triggered and in the live well. Then if it slows down, then I'll start like going through the process in my head. Okay, they don't want this, stroking it or ripping it out of the grass. I will tell you that one of the best days I've had pre-spawn up on St. Clair, you had to throw that tube out and just close the bail and not move the rod. They wanted it dead still on the ground, and then they would go over and you just feel a tick and your line would move. So I think I have progressed over the years where I used to just drag a tube around 80% of the time. I'll start cracking it right off the bat, maybe the first 5 casts. If I don't get one to trigger on doing that, then I'll start slowing my retrieve down, maybe letting it sit a minute, maybe just let it drift. Maybe I'll use the lightest, jig head that I can and let it float a little bit in the current. But to answer your question, what I started doing a couple years ago and what I do now is I try to get those aggressive fish. So that's the ripping the tube and really working it. And if they're there and they're hungry, they'll eat it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Makes
then I go
sense.
through the process. Yeah. And then finally, the last part of the process would be letting it sit.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you ever fish it with straight braid?
I don't fish anything straight braid except frog, a buzzbait, or if I'm in Florida and I'm flipping 50 or 65-pound braid when you're punching 1.5s. I have so much confidence and I know everybody's like, oh, he's sponsored by P-Line, whatever. I have not lost a fish, broke off a fish on P-Line ever. Like, that's not to say it can't be done, but that's what gives me confidence. So I will use P-Line fluorocarbon as a leader on everything, except for those, those 3 or 4 applications that you may have something crazy going on. But some guy, and I'm not saying that you could probably use the 8-pound braid and get away with it most of the time. But I think the fall rate's a little different. And if you're trying to get, the most natural look to your tube, I'm not sure that you get that with a braid, but somebody could prove me dead wrong. The 3 of us know we could say, hey, this is the general rule in fishing, and somebody will go out and do the exact opposite and blast them. So
Yep.
there's nothing in fishing that's 100%. So somebody may comment on here, I use braid 100% of the time, and I whacked 25 pounds today. I don't discount that at all. I'm just telling you my experience. I always have the fluorocarbon leader.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we got a comment we'll get right here. Deanna Lavorne going to Kentucky Lake this weekend, and hopefully she can get on.
Don't go in the coves. That's what I'll tell you. Fish the main river ridges in anywhere from 12 to 15 feet of water. Start out with a 6XD. If they won't hit that, then you can start going to a drop shot or something like that. But I promise you, if you get on the right ledge and you're throwing a 6XD, you're gonna whack them. I watched it. So that's where they're gonna stay for the rest of the summer. They're not leaving, right?
No.
That's not to say you can't go flip them up in the bushes still, but the majority of your fish are already out on the main lake ridges. So just spend your time in 12 to 15 feet and have a ball.
Oh yeah, now talking about that 6XD, I was with a guy. I think it was a Bass Open down in Douglas, and the last day they needed marshals, and I was there as a co anyway. I said, "Yeah, I go marshal," and it's cool. The guy was throwing a 6XD on a point, and he was bringing it in. He says, "Come look at this," and it is when live scope first come out. He was bringing that fish in, and this other fish was going back and forth trying to knock that bait out of that fish.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What if I bring 2 in?" I'm like, he said, "Well, call the tournament director." So I did. He says, "Hey, just so he's got 5 in the live well, he can cull out, do whatever. Just so he's got 5 and not 6 in the live well, he's good." So,
Yeah,
but it's amazing that fish was just crashing it. I mean,
Justin Lucas had that happen a couple times. He's bringing in a 2-pounder, and he's like, "Look over the side of the boat." And you'd look over, and there'd be a 5-pounder underneath that 2-pounder that was on that 6XD. So, yeah, I mean I'm not going to tell you I don't use that on St. Clair, but I'm not talking about that. So.
yeah, we saw was it Hank Cherry? He was on a jerk bait, and he had a big largemouth come up on a point, and he was reeling it, and all of a sudden it jerked kind of funny. Brought in as a smallmouth. Smallmouth knocked the largemouth off and got hooked on the jerk bait.
And when they're on a crankbait, there is no more fun bite than smallmouth on a crankbait. I promise.
Oh yeah.
You.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like catching them on an A rig. That you're just reeling it, and then it almost takes the rod out of your hand when they hit that crankbait. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And talk about twos. I've seen a couple of guys like fish it as almost like a fluke, weightless, and doing it like almost subsurface and jerking it back and forth like a fluke. I've saw that work a couple times.
I mean, it's almost I kid you not, it's almost like a Cinco. I don't know that there's only 5 or 6 ways to do it. You can rig a tube a bunch of different ways. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning. I don't know why people stop doing it because it's a fish catching machine.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you can do it weightless. You can do it on a Carolina rig. You can do a drop shot. You can do a regular tube head. You can do a stupid tube. Like you can flip it. Like there's 6 right off the top of my head. Like. So,
yeah, flipping a tube's pretty hot around here still. I still see a lot of older guys flipping and pitching tubes. So.
Denny Brower made a living out of doing it in the 90s.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
he brought that classic on it and had that solid head. I still like that Strike King. I think they still make it. That is flipping tube with a solid
Yeah,
head. That's
that's
pretty
what it
cool.
Yep.
was called. It was called the
Yep.
Denny Brower flipping tube.
Yep.
Yeah, my guess is he probably won $500,000 flipping that tube, and everybody thought he was flipping a jig.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
Which makes sense. But how do you decide the weight of the tube head?
I typically like to go 1/4 to 3/8. I mean, that's 90% of the applications will work that way. Um, if it's windy and you're in, especially Lake Erie, now there's a pro and con to this. You know, if you're out there in 4-footers and I don't know if you all know who Steve Clapper is.
Yep.
He's a legend up on Lake Erie. Well, I think something happened to my boat or something, and I just jumped in as a co-angler. So we made the championship day. We went out and I lost 2 5-pounders. He gave me a chance to win it. He ended up winning the tournament. I finished 4th. But
Wow.
when you get to the 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce, man, I think hookup ratio goes way, way down. So I try to do it as light a weight as I can, just because you have that weight pulling against the fish. You know, the fish,
Yep.
smallmouth jump, right? 90% of smallmouth jump. They jump and you have that weight hanging out of their mouth. Like, it just creates enough that some of them come unbuttoned. Now, not all of them do, but I start out with 1/4. If it's just normal fishing conditions, that's my go-to, 1/4.
Yep.
The more waves, the more wind, the more current, I'll kick it up to a 3/8. I'll say 1/2 is probably about as heavy as I'll go. But on Erie, when you're fishing those deep rock piles, and you're fishing rock piles in anywhere from 18 to 30 feet of water, you want that tube to go fast because you
Yep.
don't want them to get a good look at it. So then you'll go a little heavier, but you're fishing a little deeper. Typically on St. Clair, I mean, you're fishing anywhere from 12 to 18. There are some days you can get out on the 20-foot range, but most of the time you're not that deep. So, I mean, it's 16, 18 is the max, but Erie, you're fishing deep rock piles. So then you'll go a little heavier because you want that, no different than, flipping a crawl or something. You want that bait to shoot past them to where they don't get an idea, and then they're just striking it on instinct.
Definitely.
It's funny you say that, because like 90% of the time I'm throwing a tube, I'm throwing it either a 1/2 or a 5/8.
Yeah.
It works for me. It works for me.
No, I mean, it's absolutely. I think, there's just I like, especially on St. Clair, I think they want a more natural looking kind of,
Yep.
but I mean, I fished Champlain before. I fished it as in an FLW. Like, they wanted that bait going. So I was throwing a big brush hog on that one, but I think I was using a 5/8 and just pitching the tubes down in Ticonderoga or fishing the holes in the grass. But they wanted that bait rocket into it. And if you went to 1/4, you didn't get bit. But the 5/8, 3/4, they would eat it immediately because it was just something that came by them. And so, yeah, there's just two different schools in it, and I think it really depends on the body of water. How the
Yeah.
fish are reacting to.
Definitely.
Absolutely. They'll tell you pretty quick usually.
Oh yeah. The first fish or two will tell you. Like, you can overthink it. You can
Yeah.
overthink it a lot. So
Are you saying fishermen overthink?
Yeah, we're our own worst enemies.
I
I
agree
mean,
with that.
let's face it. 80% of the time, fishing isn't that hard. But we make it hard
Yeah.
because we overthink it, and we got to change baits every 5 minutes when you don't catch a fish, and then the fish aren't hitting on this thing, and then you watch the tournament results and it was one on the exact same thing you caught your first 2 fish on. So I'm not saying be stubborn and not get away from your initial instincts, but the first couple fish, just the way they're hooked and the way they have their bait in their mouth, will tell you if the fish want that bait or not. If it's a crankbait and they only have that last treble hook on the back barely in their mouth, that probably either the retrieve or that's not the bait they want. Now, if you throw that tube and you got to get a pair of pliers to get it out, that's probably what they want to eat.
Yeah.
So, So let the fish tell you. You can't force them to eat what they don't want to eat.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
true.
So, I mean, they'll eat it when they want, how they want it. And, we spend an awful lot of money trying to get them to do stuff that they don't want to do. So,
Absolutely. And
You
well,
got
I
any
said
questions?
I'm like you. It's amazing. I like to have a penny for every tube that's ever been sold. I could have been retired 5 years ago.
right. I was just going through my stuff before we started, and I was like, man, I still have a lot of tubes because I used
Yep.
to buy the poor boys, and they had bags of
Yep.
100,
Yep.
right? Because it was cheaper to buy them that way. Instead of buying
Yeah.
them packs of 10, you buy them by hundreds, and then you'd buy 10 bags of, and now you got 500 tubes,
Yep.
and then of course the Berkeley come out, with the gulp, and then those fish think that's crack. So then you buy a bunch of those because
Yep.
that's a heck of a bait, that green pumpkin Berkeley tube. Now it tears up pretty quick, so you go through them quickly, but those fish really like that. So, you know,
Oh, yeah, like
Yeah.
candy to them. Well, they chew it up.
so yeah,
I mean, that's how I used to buy my venom tubes, biggest bag as I could.
right. And I mean, that's probably the tube that I have the most of is the
Yeah.
Venoms because they're durable. They're really durable. You can catch a bunch of fish on the same tube. Matter of fact, I've gone like most of a practice day on the same tube, and then you pull it out, the thing's like sandpaper and it's got all the, because you caught 40 fish on it. So, but they don't tear up near as much as some of these tubes do.
Yeah, there's a lot of good tubes out there, like a lot of double dip tubes. There's all kind of variations of it now, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, most of the time I keep them the way they are in the package. Now, every once in a while, if they're finicky or if they're feeding on bluegill or something, I'll dip a tentacle in chartreuse, or
Yep.
or put a little orange on a tentacle or two. But 90% of the time, I stick to that green pumpkin or that dark color on Erie, and like they'll eat it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you don't
Every
have to
time.
you don't have to overcomplicate it and get different colored strands and dip them and dye them, and it's unnecessary. But guys do it, so
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I'm like you. I like the kiss method. I'll subscribe to that.
yeah. I mean that's in everything, right? But
Yeah, exactly.
sometimes we're just stubborn, and um, you know we just like to complicate things when it's really not complicated.
All right.
Yep.
You got anything
Well,
else? You have anything else for him, Rob? Or
no, man. Like I said, I'm like you, man. I love the old school lures, and tube, man, is one of my mainstays, and I always have it in my bag. I always got it. So, if at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I don't have a fish, and I'm needing some bites and points, I'm sticking a tube on. I'm getting bit.
Yeah, I mean, you may catch a 14 incher, but those 120 points may be the difference of you making a regional or not. So
Yeah.
I would tell you, if you're new to it, throw a stupid tube. You'll
Yep.
get less frustrated, because I mean, I get frustrated every once in a while when I'm throwing a tube and it's grass and it's really thick. And, even if you're using the 60-degree head, it can be aggravating at times, but throw the stupid tube until you get comfortable, and then work your way up. It's kind of like drinking coffee, start with cream and sugar, and before you know it, you'll be black. So
Oh yeah.
same thing with the tube. You start out with the stupid tube, and then you'll understand the ripping it out of the grass and all that, and that'll trigger the bites, and then you'll start fishing it like that. But
Yeah, or tell the guys that's starting out, hey, throw that stupid tube and just do like a Cinco. Let it do its thing. Let it dart, go to the bottom. Maybe pump it once or twice, throw it again, let it do its little thing. But get plenty of slack, let it do its thing. But watch your line. Watch your
yeah,
line.
if there's a fish around, it's going to eat it.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And if a smallie's around, he'll bite it and run about 55 miles an hour every way.
Right. Or you're going to go, wait a minute, I don't feel anything. And then it dawns on you that he's in the air. So you
Yep.
better catch up to him.
Or he's swimming to you about 50 miles an hour, and you're trying to catch you up like pistol sharpener.
That's how I lost that 7 on day 2
Oh.
at the Toyota. Is I was throwing a chatterbait, and I got a good hook set in it, and my co-angler went for the net. And he's like, "Is it a good one?" And I was like, "I don't know, because it's a race right now." Like
Yep.
he's coming to the boat and I'm trying to catch up with him. And I caught up with him right at the side of the boat. And he jumped, and my co-angler's eyes were like that. And he says, I've caught a lot of 6 and 7 pounders. And that would have gave me 25-2 for the day.
Oh man.
But hey, you know what? One fish lost out of a week. I can't complain, but it cost me making the championship day. But could I have done anything different? I don't think so. I mean, when you get a big fish like that and he wants to race you to the boat, I mean, I had a 7-1 gear ratio and it was a tie until he got to the boat. So same thing with the smallmouth. I mean, you got to have a reel that's high enough gear ratio that you can catch up with them. So, I mean, don't be
Absolutely.
afraid to use a higher gear ratio on the smallmouth, especially because they're acrobats and they can swim. So I think the largemouth kind of pull a little, they're kind of the more dig and then jump, where the smallmouth, you're gonna think, well, he's not there anymore, and the next thing you know, he's putting on a show for your GoPro. So.
That's right. Oh, and talking about Gunnersville, man, I'll tell you what, the funnest tournament I think I ever did was Gunnersville. They have the big bass bash down in like middle October.
Yeah.
I cast a check. I think 1 hour. I think I finished 4th or 5th, and had enough on that one fish that I paid for almost my whole tournament, and I almost cashed a second check. So, but that's a fun tournament, man. If you get a chance to do that tournament.
I want to fish that one, and there's a one at the beginning of the year that's like, it's like the tournament that all the local guys, so Swindle fishes it and everything else. It's the Freedom Marine Tournament.
Yeah.
And that's the one that me and my buddy last year won the first responder division, had 20 pounds, 4 ounces or something, finished 17th out of 200 boats. And I think we brought home 15 or 1600 bucks, but that's a great tournament too. And that guy, when he puts that one on, every place that finishes in a 5 gets $500. So even if you finish 95th, you get $500. And then every place that ends in a 0, you get $1,000. So 10th, 20th, 30th, 40th. So it gets like you're getting paid for every 2 out of every 5 positions, basically.
Wow.
So it's a pretty cool tournament, and I mean it's well run. They usually have Davey Height or somebody MC it. And all the big locals fish it. It's a fun, and then you can go fish against them and see how you are on their home pond. But that place is absolutely insane. It's been insane for 2.5 months right now, and they're still catching.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's probably not a healthier lake in the country right now than Gunnersville for the amount of big fish it produces every day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right, buddy. Let's start to wrap this up a little bit and give you a chance to talk about some of your great sponsors and supporters.
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked about it, a couple of them. Obviously, Daiwa, Hamilton Bait and Tackle. So, if you're in the market for some tubes, reach out to Hamilton Bait and Tackle. If you need a discount code, you can certainly use mine. Miller Tech has been an absolute game changer for me as far as power goes. I got the 190 amp hour batteries now, and I can fish for 3 days without charging a battery, and it makes your live scope work better. It's one less thing I have to worry about when I'm fishing and running live wells all day long. So Miller Tech, Power Pole, obviously P-Line. If you're fishing the Great Lakes and you're fishing the grass, a great set of sunglasses is worth its weight in gold. So amphibious sunglasses. So I mean, all the ones on my jersey, all the ones that are on my profile. I mean, I appreciate everybody's support, and appreciate that they stick with me year after year. And I mean, I couldn't do it without several of them, so I appreciate all of them. So.
Absolutely. Hey, and we appreciate you for being serving the community as long as you did. And hey, hats off to you, salute to you, sir.
I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
All right, appreciate you, brother.
All right, take care, guys.
Hey,
All
you
right.
too.
See you, Scott.
All right,
man. One of the best guys out there, man. Super nice guy.
I had the pleasure of rooming with him on Oneida Lake, and just talking to him, just the knowledge he has is incredible. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So that's it for tonight. We do have a special show tomorrow. He's a returning guest. He has his own crankbait company. Don't know what else to say about him right now, but looking forward to it.
Bassmaster Classic champion.
That's a champion, yep.
And from the great state of Mississippi.
I tried to hold the chuckles in, but I couldn't.
I know. I was poking you a little bit.
All right, folks. Well, thank you guys thank all of you very much for tuning in day after day with us. It's our pleasure to try to entertain you and just have fun, talk about fishing.
Yeah, educate you and have a little fun at the same time.
All right. So, Rob, go ahead and tell us what Ozzy says.
We love you all.